morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Diego García, who is going to inaugurate our cycle around the world in English with his presentation. Diego comes from Detroit, but his family is Spanish. Probably he will tell us a bit more about his background, and teaches English in primary school, in secondary levels, and also in the university, in the School of Computing Science, in our neighbor school. This is all. Today he's going to speak about English in Spain and the level we have in our country. Probably he's going to analyze some of the factors that affect our learning, right? That is all on my part, and thank you very much, Diego.
Thank you, Hina. Hello, and thank you all for coming. I first want to start by saying I really hope that this is a dynamic presentation, not your typical one-way presentation. I invite you, I ask you to stop, to ask me questions. If you don't understand what I'm saying, to tell me to repeat. Okay, like that's what I hope this is. And a little bit the entirety of what we're doing here. I really hope at the end that you add with your comments, your criticisms, things you agree with, stories about your English learning. All right. So after the presentation, I really hope I want us all to participate a little bit. All right, that would be ideal for me. Just out of curiosity, what year of your studies are you in now? Most of you?
Third year.
Third year. And how's the English so far? Do you understand me? I can speak more or less. If you don't understand a word, please ask me to explain. I brought the board down so I can do my little teacher routine. All of this. A few more things I want to say before we get started. So we're going to look at the big picture of Spain, the history, things that are happening now, and things we can do maybe to fix the problem, okay? Things you can do as well, on a big terms and smaller terms individually. Some of the things, they may sound like I'm criticizing, but I love Spain. I've been living here almost 9 years. I'm Spanish as well. I've been fortunate enough to grow up in a bicultural environment. About a third of my life I've been in Spain, 9 years, and as a child, almost every summer. All right, so I'm lucky enough to experience a little bit of two worlds. I don't want it to sound like I'm criticizing Spain, but I think in order to fix something, in order to make something better, you have to look at it seriously and analyze and look at it. I'm not trying to insult anyone, and I hope no one's offended. As I've been practicing the speech with a few different groups of people, it seems like, Diego, oof, tone it down. Tone it down is like, don't be so harsh, don't be so strict, don't be so honest. It seems like sometimes we have a fear of being honest. Okay, don't be insulted. I'm certainly not trying to insult anyone. I am trying to possibly, look at ways of improving things, all right? So let's get started. Before we get into the presentation, I thought maybe we should talk about, this seemed obvious to me, but also upon the recommendation of some of my students, they're like, you should put this in at the beginning. Why is English important? I think it's quite obvious. Well, let's see if this works. Okay. First of all, from a self-growth point of view, the beauty of knowledge, learning, information. Information is power, knowledge is power. Even knowing another language allows you to appreciate so many things so much better. For example, I hope you all, and I'm going to talk about this a lot today, I hope you're all watching your television series and your films in English. And if you're not, I hope that after today, you're going to. And not now, but for the rest of your life. The difference between, part of the problem is that in Spain we have very good dubbing. Dubbing is a translation of films from one language to another. And the dubbing in Spain is very good. But you miss out on the artistic performance, not hearing Clint Eastwood, not hearing Woody Allen's voice. These voices are very good. And it's half of the, for an actor, it's half of their presentation is their voice. Even the ability to read a book in its original language. Personally, whenever I read a book or a newspaper article, if the author is Spanish or Italian or French, I'll read it in Spanish. If it's German or English, I read it in English. So just from a self-growth, being a well-rounded person, I think knowing two languages is a beautiful thing, really. What's this? The internet or something. All right, more practical things. Why should you want to learn English? In today's world, both academically and professionally, if you really want to get ahead, if you want to do something with your future, it's obviously in your interest to speak a little bit of English. I mean, this seems quite obvious. In Europe today, the language of business is international English. And you have to be able to understand and be understood. Any questions, comments, anything? I really hope someone starts asking me stuff. Thinking about Spain, the bigger picture, as a country, as a culture, I think it's also in our interest, to improve the quality of English. I'm not sure if you know the opinion outside of Spain of the level of our English, but most other countries find it difficult to do business in Spain. They're surprised when they come here on tourism, on vacation, on holiday, and they find it difficult to deal with people. I think just for the progress of our country as a whole, it would interest us to raise the level of our English a little bit. And this last thing, English has become the new class divide. So maybe in your grandparents' time, what differentiated people was having your high school degree or not. Maybe for your parents, it would be having a university degree. Now, most people have a university degree. What is the new thing that differentiates people, the haves from the have-nots? Your level of English. Now, I think this is unfair and a problem. I think nowadays, if I ask you who speaks English, I don't know who the best students are. Who are the best students? Who's the best student here? Tell me, someone tell me. Who's a superstar? Who's a nerd? Which one? Which one, this guy? Who and why? And I want to know why. Which one, this guy? Do you speak English decently? Has anyone ever traveled? Did anyone go to a bilingual school? Most times when I come across a young person who actually speaks decent English, I always ask, why, how? Usually this person was fortunate enough to go to a bilingual school. Their parents paid for private classes for years. They went every summer to America or to a foreign country. I don't think this is fair, and I don't think it should be this way. All right, I'd like one of the goals of English in Spain to be much more universal. So this is a factor we should look at, the new class divide. Let's see. So here's a basic outline. Do you guys know that word, outline? My cousin said you wouldn't know that word, outline. The general points of anything. It's not a line outside. It's a scheme or something, I think you would say in Spanish. So, what are we going to look at today? Start off a little bit with a historical view in Spain and a cultural view a little bit, some things that make us different from other countries. Then I want to pass on, there's really only 3 points. Pass on to things that are happening now in Spain. I've been teaching now English for 7, 8 years of my 9 years here. I've done all sorts of levels, from kindergarten, 2-year-olds. I teach everyone English, everyone that will let me teach them English. Every sort of person, old people, almost grandparents. I'm always teaching English. I'm passionate about it, it's what I do. So look at things that are happening now, which are a lot of positive things that are happening. And then the third point, a little bit, things that we can do maybe in the big picture, and things that you can do, and things that you can tell other people to do to directly improve the situation. All right? So let's get started with point 1, the historical and cultural analysis specific to Spain. History. So, I would say, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but it seems quite obvious to me. We are at least a generation behind the rest of Europe, if not more than a generation behind the rest of Europe in the level of our English, in the development of our English, all right? Why? Let me tell you, I only have about 9 slides. For each slide, if we wanted to stop and really talk about it, we could talk for an hour or hours. We could have conferences about each of these, all right? I've given this speech more or less to groups of parents, to different people, for different amounts of time. To do the global picture that I want to do today, we kind of have to go a little bit quickly. But I could stop and talk and explain and tell you a lot more facts and data about everyone. But let's just get into it. For me, this is one of the biggest points that makes us different from the rest of the world. We are the only Spanish-speaking country that dubs all of their films. Why? How did this start? In 1941, there was an official law, legislation, stating that all films must be dubbed into Spanish by Spanish people, by Spaniards. What happens? Well, what's happened to this day? We're not used to watching anything in its original language. Very few people go to theaters. There's a positive effect. We have very good translation and dubbing. It's supposed to be amongst the best in the world. Unfortunately, they seem to be quite a powerful group within the movie industry. And I'm sorry to tell them, but for the benefit of Spain, it's in our interest, I think, to improve our English and to start with these kind of things, speaking English, or watching films and television series in English. Also, legislation around this time, there were other factors. In 1938, there was another law stating that all names must be in Spanish. Hotels, all words must be said in Spanish. Now, there's a lot of repercussions from these kind of things. Think back, this is almost 70 years ago that this started happening. To this day, I laugh about a lot of things. When I first came to Spain, it was very difficult for me to talk about some English words and to be understood, like English musical, English bands or groups. There's a lot of words that we say, a lo español. I was thinking of some this morning, and on the radio, I heard my favorite one. Tomorrow in Barcelona, some band is playing in La Sala Sidecar. When it took me like 2 years to realize they were saying sidecar. Sidecar, sidecar, that's a pretty big difference. Proper names as well. This seems like a small little detail, all right, something stupid, but I think in the big picture, this is something that it would interest us in changing. Other examples, singers, even bands, anything. The Beatles, and I don't know how Spanish people say it, Beatles, but I can talk about them for half an hour and no one understands, oh, those Beatles, why didn't you say those? My favorite, I think, is, I can't believe you do it. You guys know this Mariah Carey? How do you say Mariah Carey? Maria, what is it? Maria Caray. Mariah Carey. Yeah, more.
About Super Mario Brothers, that we pronounce it Super Mario Bros.
There's a few things like this that I think there's a few details. I think some battles we can win and some we can't. Colgate? I don't think they'll ever say Colgate. Hopefully, maybe. I know my children, at least, the students I teach and my students, they don't say PlayStation. They say PlayStation. All right? There's some things that I hope to change. These kind of things would be a big step in the right direction. So those are some things and some general historical facts that have led us, I think, a little bit to this point. If we look a little closely at the teaching of how English has been taught in Spain all these years. One of the first things is that we have been late. Well, this is a whole nother debate. If you want to accept English as a lingua franca or not, we could talk for years about this argument. Spanish, what is there, should there be, shouldn't there be a lingua franca? We all understand the term? Lingua franca, universal language, what Latin was in Roman times. Spain has arrived later than most other countries. I'd like to do a quick survey. Do you know survey? What does survey mean? I'd like to do a quick survey. How many of your parents in school studied English and how many studied French? How many of your parents, please raise your hands. How many of your parents studied French in school? Anyone? Yeah, take a quick look at that. What's that, 80%? How many studied English? Anyone lucky enough? Your parents studied English. Where did your parents study? Interesting. Aside from starting later than most other countries, we never really started teaching it properly. This class, and there are a lot of teachers who do make an effort and do try and do it properly. But I think traditionally in Spain, English class has been, and I want to do another survey now, taught in Spanish. Your English classes, let's do another show of hands. Your English classes in high school, all right, back in. How many of your classes, okay, there's either two choices. Most of the class was taught in English or most of the class was taught in Spanish. How many of you, for most of your secondary education, your English classes were mostly in Spanish? Hands down. Anyone have, was anyone lucky enough, I'm sure there's a few, who had a crazy English teacher who spoke English, even one or two? A few English teachers? All right, there's a handful, 4 or 5 hands. And that made a big difference, no? No. This is a huge factor, all right? And even now, to this day, you guys who are fairly young, relatively young, you still haven't had teachers. A language cannot be taught in a foreign language. In Spanish, you're not going to learn much English speaking Spanish. We are, I think most Spaniards, most young Spaniards and even older ones are fairly good at grammar, all right? But that's not the most important. I always say I can teach grammar to a monkey, all right? But I can't teach a monkey to speak English. So you guys are as good as monkeys. It's not an insult, it's a joke. We've ignored the most important part, communication. Listening and speaking. Why? I think most of the English teachers don't feel secure in their oral skills and therefore focus historically on grammar. And if it's still the case today, well, imagine how it was years ago, even worse. So that's a little bit of a history, and I think there's a few things we can say. This is the slide that I changed a lot because the other groups thought it was very, I don't know, too polemic. A few things, but there are a few things we can say about being Spanish that have affected our level of Spanish. The first thing, what's this? Our first language in Spanish is Spanish. What does this mean? How does this affect everything? By having a first language that is one of the most important languages in the world, you know, there's 3, 4, we can talk about French, Spanish, English, Chinese. By having a strong first language, there's much less motivation for you to learn English. We can look at Americans and the British. They by no means are examples to follow as to the level of their second language. If you have a very good first language, there's less incentive, there's less reason to speak a second language, to learn a second language. So this is, in a way, a factor as to why we've been less motivated. But I think the time has come for us to accept the way the world is and the way the world is going to be, at least for the next few decades. If you speak to most English teachers, they will say the first thing generally, and I've talked to hundreds of English teachers, one of our biggest fights, our biggest battle, one of the things that's most difficult is to get to anyone to say one sentence in English. I think there's a certain pride, there's a certain, what I say on the slide, fear of failure, come on in. A certain fear of failure, and that's a bit particular to the Spanish way of being. Even economically and in the business world, we're afraid to start our own businesses compared to some other Anglo-Saxon cultures, for example. Americans learn by bumping their head against a wall 10 times. Well, the 11th time maybe is, all right? To learn, you have to make mistakes. And I don't know what it is about Spanish people that they just, no.
Failure is less tolerated. I don't know why, but it is this way. For example, in businesses, when you try to start your own enterprise or your own company, and then you fail, you are sentenced for life in this country. But for example, in the Anglosphere, people are more tolerant because it is right to just fail at the first attempt
and it's
to do
a process.
anything. Sorry?
It's a process, exactly.
It is a
You
process.
may fail 10 times.
Nobody knows how to do things at the first time they try it. It's a learn and fail process of learning.
Trial and error.
Yeah, trial and error, sorry.
Even some of our great American legends or whatever, Thomas Edison, I could go through a list of names who were famous. The Wright brothers, the guys who invented the aeroplane, all these people, they teach us from the beginning, you know, that's no problem, trial and error, you fail, you lift yourself up and you try again. They knock you down, you lift yourself up and you try again. Another culture that's similar to Spain in this is Japan. And the Japanese have 0 level of English. Their below level is probably worse than Spain. And they are, well, their whole culture of pride, fear of failure. What will he think? What will she think? What will they say? Oh man, okay, we should start going. Yeah, get into things. Another thing, let's go over this quickly. Here in Spain, one thing that we are world champions in my opinion, is complaining. And it's never your fault. All right? If it's not Zapatero, it's Pepe. If it's not the king, well then it was Franco. If it wasn't my teacher, it was my school or the Ministry of Education. No one in all of this ever says, what did I do? That's what I hope we can look at, say, things you can do. It's really easy.
Yes, and that is something too rooted in the history of Spain, because in ages past, for example, the Inquisition was to be blamed.
Always
for the cultural,
cultural
for being
repression.
culturally or scientifically behind the rest of the world.
Yep. Cultural repression. That is happening in China with the Great Leap Forward and things like this. Yeah, certainly. It's a little more difficult. It's really easy to point the finger, all right? It's a lot more difficult to do something. I always like to look at myself first before I start criticizing and complaining. And I could talk for hours about things I need to improve personally, about things in America. Let me talk about the problems in America. We'll be here for a week, okay? But this topic is English in Spain, so don't be offended. All right. Back to the main outline. So we looked over the historical and cultural view really quickly. Now I want to focus on things that are happening now in Spain, and then later on lead to possible solutions. Positive things that are happening, and there are a lot of them, positive things that are happening in Spain. Questions, comments about anything I've said? Vocabulary words? Are you understanding most of it? Okay, you guys seem like pretty good students. Yesterday I did it to a class I'm giving over in Caminos of first-year students, and the looks on their faces, these poor guys. So I'm glad it seems like over your years here, somehow or another, your English has improved, and you should feel proud of this, and you should try and do a lot more and go further and really improve. You can. I think in general, there's certainly talking to parents, there's an importance being placed on English. I think for parents, it's their primary concern when they're talking about and looking at a school, a primary or a secondary school. Sure, but how's their English? So I think speaking generally, this is one thing that's happened. There are several programs that have been going on for years now that the Ministry of Education has been doing. Since 1996, they have an agreement with the British Council to send students over there, but for teacher training as well. I've met some teachers who have gone over there. They do a 2 months intensive course. There's various programs. 2 months intensive course here, and then 2 weeks over there. And you can really tell their level of English has improved. More recently, with all this boom of bilingual schools, particularly here in Madrid, there's a few programs through the Ministerio for getting native English speakers into classes, into schools as bilingual, as conversation teachers. And I know one program has 500 students. I don't know if the British Council has almost 1,000 teachers now, native teachers in schools teaching English. There's a ton of scholarships. You guys know that word? You guys are good. You must have a good teacher. There's a ton of scholarships, not only for students. If you guys go on the Ministerio de Educación, the Ministry of Education website, but also for teachers. There are a lot of opportunities and a lot of things to go anywhere around the world, study English, do school interchanges. There's some teachers who go in and do specific teacher training at schools and try to improve the level. So all these are certainly steps in the right direction and positive things. I mentioned the whole boom of bilingual schools. That's certainly a positive thing, although we're going to look at this as well in the next slide as a negative thing. But I think a big difference from how you were probably taught English, teaching science, teaching history in English is a big step forward. My favorite classes to give in English are art, plástica as you guys call it. I love that class in English, and the kids speak, and it's great. So these are all positive things. I hope that there's a sort of snowball effect happening, that the more and more real proper teachers that there are in Spain, and the more and more people who speak real and proper English, that people become more accustomed, not scared of speaking correctly. And I hope it starts spreading a little bit, and certainly for future generations. All right. So things that were happening now that are positive things, and some things that we still need to take big leaps forward and continue improving. We already did the survey in class of how you were taught English. Almost all of you were taught mostly in Spanish. You can't teach a language this way. Especially it's criminal to do it with the youngest ones, kindergarten and in primary school, when they're sponges, you know, a sponge that absorbs water. And they are sponges, and they're sponges too, not as sponge as the little ones. But it's criminal that the classes are still in Spanish, and the obsession with memorization, that's a very Spanish thing, and I see that at all education levels compared to my American academic upbringing. The insistence in primary, secondary, and university on memorization rather than other learning skills. And the obsession with translating everything into Spanish, that we shouldn't really do that if you're learning a language. You should just live it. Other things. So, things that are happening now that still need to improve. Now there's a whole thing in Spain, it's called habilitaciones. So what's this? When a Spanish teacher in secondary or primary school goes and does a few months course and gets a piece of paper saying they can now teach a class, a subject in Spanish. I've met a lot of these teachers. They cannot say 3 sentences, 2 sentences in English, and they are now teaching English. And they're going to be teaching English for a long time in all these bilingual schools. So what kind of English are we teaching? At the same time, I got my magisterio here in Spain. It was a distance course. I'm actually going to talk about that in the next slide. And none of my colleagues, none of the other students could speak English. The classes were in Spanish. Future English teachers, it's really not changing that much. Future English teachers still can't speak English. It's frightening. This whole thing, I said alleged bilingual schools. So we have, I don't know, well, so we're going to look at the adverts. You know the advertisements, it's all over the metro and on television. Yes, we want, yes, we want.
Yes, we want to.
Exactly. All right. I don't know if some of you, I know most teachers have looked at these articles, but, well, let's look at it first, and then there's 2 big points. Let's see if the video works. Alright, let's start from the beginning. Oh, is the audio only coming from here? Especially, you have to listen as well.
We want to learn another language. Yes, we want. We want to speak and read English.
Perfect English.
Yes, we want. Want to write? Yes, we want. Mamá, papá, queremos estudiar español y inglés porque es la educación que queremos. Apúntanos ya. Yes, we want. Comunidad infantil.
I'm sorry about the audio. I don't know if you could hear, but you've all heard it before. The first point is the grammar is incorrect. Yes, we want, never. Do you answer a question? Yes, we want. It's yes, we want to. Yes, I do. Something. So here's this advert that we're promoting bilingual schools. Sure, they're playing with the Obama thing, but we're talking about English. Is this the English we're doing? And did anyone? I don't know if you picked up on what they were saying, but if you listen to it, there's a few girls. Well, what's the point? You know? Can you read my mind? You know what do you think of the pronunciation? Well, first they have a girl, or they have the first 2 girls are. Well, it's a shame we can't listen to it. I don't know why it isn't. But I'm guessing, I don't know. They've been going to academies, or they're hearing one of their parents is English or something. But whenever the children start chanting, and next time you listen to it, you see it on television, listen and you'll see, yes, we won. Yes, we 1, 2, 3, yes, we want. They can't even get that right on the commercial. So when they have children chanting, yes, we won, listen, it's really bad. I know some of these bilingual schools. The school I teach at is not a bilingual school. We only have 7 hours of English, 6 or 7 hours per class. But we have a group of teachers who teach English properly, and I guarantee you the level of our students is higher than that of most of these supposed bilingual schools with teachers who have gotten their certification, their teacher certification, their Habilitación, teachers who don't speak English in class. You know, sure, the community's pushing it, but what's the level? What's the standard? All right. One thing I hate is that everyone's always, and even when I talk to students, yeah, next year I want to go to Ireland, or I'm going to, everyone thinks that in order to learn English, you have to go to another country. That's a shame. If that's the case, that is a shame. And I don't think it is the case. I think each individual can do a lot of things to improve the level of their English without having to go abroad. I just think it's sad. As a country, for an educational system, that in order for a Spaniard to learn English, they have to go to another country. And actually, I have some articles if you want to look at them. We are the country in Europe that sends the most people to foreign countries. Our level is still at the bottom. Going to another country isn't always the best solution. Certainly, if you go with your girlfriend, forget about it. If you go with another group of Spaniards, forget about it. Usually, when you go to an English academy, if you guys ever do go, do not go to an academy. That's a big mistake. Go and do an arts class, do a yoga class, join a running club. You're in an English academy, you're with an Italian guy, a Chinese guy, a French guy, no one's speaking proper English. Going abroad and going to English academies, it's great. Living in another country is certainly the best thing to pick up, the best way to pick up another language. But it's not the only way, and not always the best way when not done properly. Yes, again. All right. So, more or less on time. Things that we've talked about already. The historical view, the current situation, things that are happening now that still need to improve. Possible solutions. I think I want to look at this in two ways. Long-term answers and short-term answers. Things that you can do, things that you can start doing when you leave this room today. Things you can tell your friends, families, neighbors to do. That's my dream. It's the snowball effect. You know the snowball effect? Do you understand that? Snowball gets bigger and bigger and bigger. I'm one of these crazy Americans who thinks they can change the world. I can't, but you can, and if a lot of people start thinking that way, a few things that need to change. Just look at the way we do English in general. Reconsider the whole teaching English and Spanish, unacceptable. We have to change that. There has to be better teacher training. You have to live the language, you cannot translate. So a serious look at the education, at the way we do it. That point I talked about earlier about Maria Caray, Silica, another one, the jeans you guys are wearing. Do you know how to say that? What's the most famous brand of jeans in the world? Can anyone say it in English? You go to the UK, you go to America, you can ask for Levi's all day. They will not give you a pair of pants. It's Levi's, not Levi's. This seems like a small, insignificant thing, but I don't think it is. Here, I think mass media could have a giant effect. I think Radio Televisión Española should really get on board with, in the newscast, why do we have to translate when anyone speaks? Why can't we just leave it in English and subtitles? Even DJs on the radio, it's so frustrating when I want to write down the name of a band and I have no idea what they said. And I speak Spanish and I still don't understand. I think mass media really, in a kind of subversive way, could start brainwashing us and at least the future generations into accepting that there's nothing wrong with saying things correctly in the way they should be said in English. Actually, just really quickly, I was talking with, at one of these conferences I attended, David Gradle. He's a famous linguist, he's written some books. And afterwards, we were talking for a while about all of this stuff. And I asked him directly, so how long until we can change the situation in Spain? And this man told me 60 years until we could hope. And this guy's an expert. I'm a crazy teacher. This man told me 60 years, but I find that unacceptable. And here's my crazy American thing saying, no, you're wrong. And we can do it faster and better. These two things are big things that would help us bring that down to 30 years, to 10 years, 60 years. That's your children's children are finally going to be the first ones to speak real English. Look at another thing we have to do is certainly raise the level. I myself feel the need when I'm here for 2-3 years without having gone back home to Detroit. I feel the need to go back and refresh my English. All teachers should refresh all of their information and knowledge. These people who barely speak English in class, really spoke 20-30 years ago, never do courses, never do anything to improve, to brush up on their English. Well, it's certainly, I mean, I'm the first one. I can tell my English gets worse and worse as I stay here. You guys affect me. It's contagious in a negative way. So certainly we have to look at that, raise the requirements. This whole habilitación thing of teacher certificates, I don't think it's the right answer. We'll look at that with the short-term answers. My biggest point is, one of the biggest points, and one of the things that you can do immediately is start watching everything in English. I've been talking about this for years before TDT. I was always excited and telling parents, in a few years the TDT's coming, digital television, and now you don't have an excuse anymore. So, okay, we can complain. You don't have an excuse. I always tell parents, I'm like, you can press the button, or you can spend $5,000 and send your kids to an Irish camp when they're 15 years old, or just press the button now. Is it difficult at the beginning? Yes. Do you not understand a lot at the beginning? Yes. If you're consistent and you continue doing it, do you start learning? How many of you, another quick survey, how many of you watch your television shows in English? At the beginning, difficult, and now you prefer it, I'm guessing, right? And the whole thing I was saying about appreciating the beauty of art or things like that, just general knowledge. Tell this to everyone you come across who's interested. Do it for your children. Tell your neighbors, your cousins. This is, I think, a giant factor that could start affecting us immediately. I'm sure half of you have lived this, and it's. Am I right here? It makes a big difference. It improves your English. All of this. I was talking about English being, in one of the first slides, a great class divide. I want to tell you a little story. My mother's from Córdoba, from a town, Puente Genil, and I've been going for Semana Santa for 4 or 5 years now. So I go down to the pueblo, small, medium-sized town. I'm always teaching English. I start teaching my little cousins. You do colors, numbers, body parts with children. We get to the body parts, eyes. This girl tells me, ellos. Nose, no sé. Her teacher is teaching ellos and no sé. I don't think it's funny. I think it's cruel. I think it's wrong. I think it's unfair. We're lucky, we're in Madrid. Apparently the capitals, their level of English is a little bit better. But I'd like to be fair and just, and we have to spread this to all of Spain. The television and media in proper English is one way that directly affects that. Sure, her teacher might say ellas, but eventually the girl will know those are eyes. And no sé, no sabes nada. You're kidding me. Short-term things, you can guess a few of these I'm going to say now. This course I did in I don't know if I said where, I'm not supposed to say. This distance training course I did in a prestigious university. It is god-awful. It is terrible. And there are hundreds of students who all are trying to get their English degree. You cannot, if you want to go and do this course, you have to wait 2 years because the registration has been filled. The classes are in English. All of these hundreds of teachers who come from all over Spain and once a month listen to maybe 3 hours of English, which isn't even English, are going to be teaching English in Spain for 20, 30, 40 years. This cannot be. At my school now, they send me girls from a different university who does a distance course as well for their teacher training, practicas. They stay in class for 2 weeks, for a month. I get a little upset, and now I tell these, I've even made 1 or 2 of these teachers cry. They come into my class, we're all speaking English, they start speaking Spanish, and I ask them directly, well, why do you want to be a teacher? What are you doing? You can't speak English, what are you doing as an English teacher? No, I'm only want to do kindergarten, only in primary. No, you're wrong, that's when it's most important. Now in the school, they only send me teachers who have a certain level of English. But these distance courses, it can't work, you can't learn a language. Well, you can improve your language, but a distance course for Magisterio is just wrong. This as a short-term solution. I hope that as more and more people speak proper English, more and more students speak better English, which is certainly happening now. But I think as a short-term remedy, a short-term solution, they should make it easier. And it's already being done with those programs I mentioned about getting native teachers into schools. I think we need to continue this. Also, it's really difficult, all the paperwork, to work here in Spain. So just to make it easier for all of these people. These programs that we talked about, yeah, they're great. Do it even more and do it even better. These programs for teacher training, getting teachers into English classes, and getting them out to native speaking countries. We need to do more of that. Once again, the same thing I've been talking about all day. Short-term solution, you can do right now, anyone can do, watching TV in English. It is something that differentiates us greatly from Europe or most of the world. And this is something that you can start doing now. That's more or less it. To go over a little bit the things that I hoped to accomplish. First off, realize and admit there is a problem that needs to be addressed, that needs to be looked at. A look at how it is why we're different from other places, why we are where we are. Look at the situation now, things that are being done. Some big answers and some smaller answers that you can start doing now. And lastly, and most importantly, I really think this, I bet you don't know this expression, grassroots movement. Anyone? It's usually like a political thing where 2 people start a project, an idea, and they get a 3rd person, then a 4th person, and it starts from the people, not from the government. Because we can wait and complain and say the Ministry of Education does this wrong, the teachers are terrible, or you can start doing things now, yourselves. I hope that maybe you spread the word a little bit and go and tell other people, especially with young children, man, there's this crazy American guy, but a lot of the things he said were right. We need to start improving our English. We need to take it seriously, all of these things. I don't know, I really hope you help me, help us and other teachers. There's a lot of quality teachers here in Spain in this battle. So now, questions, comments, I'll put the general outline up there. And please, opinions, what do you think? Criticisms. Who's gonna be first? Let someone else talk. Something? Anyone? Yeah?
Thank you. What age do you think is the best age to begin with the learning? I mean, if it is good to talk with a newborn or something like that.
There's studies that have looked at even the fetus. Most of the studies agree that between 1.5 and 2.5 years from an auditive, although they can't produce anything, they can't speak anything, but to hear the, how do you say it in English? Phonemes or something, I don't know. What is it? Phonemes? Just to hear them being reproduced is a big difference. That seems to be the general, but there's a lot of different opinions on this subject, but it's never too early. I think everyone can speak. Certainly when you're watching these films and everything, I think the subtitles should be in Spanish or in English?
In English.
In English, all right? These kids, although they don't know, they start hearing sounds and looking at letter formations, and you really start connecting the dots. So it's never too early, and it's never too late. Okay, what else? What didn't we like? Come on. The guys yesterday were talking a lot more. In my class yesterday, we were talking for a good while. You're tired, you want to go eat? No? Nothing? Yeah?
I'd like to know what you think about there is a TV channel on TDT, Vaughan, and I'd like to know what you think about this channel.
I love this man. I love this man.
It's really good to.
When you're watching it and he says, repeat, yes I will. Do you say yes I will? Are you there in your sofa? When you watch this guy, and it's important, it's so difficult even to get students. I get my younger students, it's not a problem. When I say repeat, they repeat. But even when I'm in a class in the university, I say repeat. And no one says anything. No, repeat after me. And he does the same thing. Yes, this guy's making millions and more power to him. It's great that he is. But he's doing Spain a service as well. I think and as a teacher, from a teacher point of view, I think him in particular, he's a superstar. He's been doing this, 20, 30 years here in Spain, something like this. I think he's an excellent teacher. I think he's doing Spain a big service. And they have some interesting programs. They have this one linguist who can talk about words and history and stuff for a long time. Yeah. So, yes, I would like them to do a bit more children's program. I know on the radio they have a few children's shows. Yeah.
But Diego, he works with translation. What do you think about that?
There's two different, why is he working with translation? There's a few different types of learners. When it's an adult, you almost have to. Once you get past the age of about 12, 13, they say it's more difficult to reprogram your hard drive as a computer, to reprogram your brain. So in those situations, for adult learners, it is much more difficult, I'll be honest, with adult learners. And in that situation, that's the reason he's forced into translating. But on a primary school and kindergarten, I think that is, most experts, most studies will tell you that would not be the thing to do.
When you watch TV series and television, what do you think? If it's better to get all the main point, although you don't know exactly the meaning of each word, or it's better to look up for those words?
Same thing applies to when you're reading an article. Most people will tell you that you should first off try and understand by the context. And usually you do understand. You know more or less what they're trying to say at that moment or from the paragraph of the article. One thing that we do in America when you're in the university and everything is people, and especially with mobile phones, and I do this in Spanish, whenever I come across a word or a word formation, a phrase that I don't know, is you write it down. Don't necessarily stop and look it up. If you're online, there's no excuse. If you're on the computer, click, there's your answer. But if you're reading, I write a lot of things down, and then I later look it up. When you're reading a book, if you're reading a novel, you just keep a piece of paper, write it down, write the page number. But this is true, a lot of scholars do this. My sister is a big lawyer in New York, and she does this. She has a long list of words. So try to understand from the context, don't stop. Do you watch your series in English?
Yeah.
Well, don't you see the big improvement from season 1 to season 2 and season 3?
Yeah, until season 10.
Which show are you watching?
I watched a long time ago Friends. The whole.
No, Friends is okay too. But one thing, talking about TV series, a bit of a different point. The television has improved greatly in the quality of TV series. Friends was good, but now they say in America that there's a phenomenon. All the best script writers have gone from Hollywood to television series, and there's a long list of comedies and serious House 20, but even some of these 24 and Lost seem to be one kind, very exciting ones. I like the HBO series Sopranos, Sex and the City, Girls, a lot of women have improved their English with Sex and the City, Sopranos, but there's a whole bunch of these really good shows that are out there now. Mad Men, there's one now in America, Mad Men. That's supposed to be great. And comedies, The Office. There's one, my favorite comedy is The Office. And the good thing about that, it was originally in a British show in the BBC. So you can watch the British version and you can watch the American version. It's not the same stories, but it's two different accents. So I like The Office. And comedies I think are a little easier too, because it's 20 minutes, 23 minutes, shorter, easier to watch. So. Yes.
I have a question just for my curiosity.
Yes. Feel free.
In United States, people when watch, for example, All About My Mother or films from here, how do they watch?
They would almost always watch it in English unless you're in. It depends the kind of student. I said both the Brits and the Americans, are not good as their second language. They're not good with second languages. But maybe like in city centers at universities, that's where you would have people and film people who are film buffs, film gurus, people who like films and who study film. They would be watching it in the original language. But I see that's the whole thing. My first point, the beauty. I would never, and I just won't watch it. If I would never watch a Spanish film in English. Why should I have to? I cannot sit through a comedy. I tried it once, an English comedy in Spanish. The jokes do not translate. The cultural references do not translate. I went to the cinema one time, 9 years ago, and that was the last time I went to because the person didn't speak, and I'm like, okay, oh, sorry. So yeah. Well, if there's nothing else, thank you all for coming. Spread the word. Tell people you can do it.